Now, before the pledges, I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge the loss in our community of a longtime public servant, one of the last World War II veterans in our state. He, for decades, served in the legislature. He served on town selectmen, on the county commissioner board many, many years ago. And Roy Nickerson died on Saturday. We had the privilege of honoring Mr. Nickerson at the last Spirit of America Awards. And I don't know if you remember when we got in the middle of describing all the things he had done, he got a standing ovation from the crowd. And he asked me at the time to help him stand up. Made me really nervous because I hadn't seen Roy out of his wheelchair in probably 10 years. Helped him stand up. He wanted to stand up so he could salute the crowd. And it was a really emotional moment. And Saturday morning he passed. So we want to thank Roy, his family, for the sacrifice they made as Roy served his community for his entire adult life, really. So stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, all commissioners are present. Okay, I would accept a motion to approve the waiver of the reading of the minutes from June 16th.
Madam Chair, I move to waive the reading of the minutes of June 16th, 2021.
Second,
Madam Chair, it's Roland, second.
any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay. Review and approve all warrants. A motion, please.
I move to approve annual payroll warrants 2124, 2125, 2126, 2143J, 2203J, and 2203. They're duplicates. 2203J. So that one only once.
Okay. Second, please.
Chair, I'll second the motion to approve the warrants.
Any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, we will vote all in favor of approving the warrants. Okay, opposed? Maine County Commissioners Association, I don't believe they had a meeting the last few months.
They
have they?
actually did.
They
I
did?
participated. There wasn't a whole lot going on. They did reference some of the legislation that had happened and so on. Particularly the LD 677, which the governor vetoed. And anyway, there was some just general conversation, but there wasn't any specific big things I need to tell you.
I did see they sent a letter to the United States Treasury Department with asking for clarification about something to do with broadband. So I don't know what the rub on that one was, but clearly some of them are thinking about using their money for broadband, but
Although the latest thing that we have heard from of us is that the state has got so much money to put into broadband that we probably can be thinking about something else.
Which is really odd because broadband is one of the few things they carved out
Right.
at the beginning. So yeah, it's going to be one of those things, you just have to watch it shake out. There was at NACO in Washington, there was a lot of talk about broadband, so I think that's sort of on, especially up in the far east states. They've got some issues up there, but. Okay, anything else on that, Mr. Post?
No.
On the meeting, okay. All right, Central Maine Workforce Board. Commissioner Kelly.
I don't have anything at this time.
Okay, so we're at the end of the second quarter. There's not really a lot to report. All departments are within budget. It is the end of the jail year. We're probably 99% closed out. And right now, they're under budget. They were actually budgeted to use 550,000 of fund balance. Right now, they've only used 440,000. So we're not going to be using as much fund balance as we anticipated, which is good news. Other than that, it's not really a lot to talk about. And you were given the detail. That report, that's kind of Staples strange.
Before we take a vote to accept that report, any questions for the treasurer?
Okay. So I see a lot over on the jail. Can you just explain what? Place where we're within budget, but there's seeing all those gray lines is a little concerning. What was the main cause of that? Was this the pandemic panic response or was this other issues? Honestly, I'm not expecting you to explain every line. I'm just curious as to sort of what that root cause, or is this a bunch of separate causes that are sort of unrelated?
Separate causes. I mean, some things came in a little over budget, you know, because they do their budget like way before. So.
This-
things came in more than they
this-
anticipated mostly.
The pensions, 45,000, 23,000, is that from union negotiations and increases, or is that something? On the last. I'm just seeing that on the last page, it's showing the correctional officers' salaries are over by 45,000, pensions over by 23,000.
The pension would depend on who is, what the employees opt to have deducted, because we match. And as far as the corrections, it looked to me like, because we have in the payroll software, what their title is, and it might not line up with the staffing plan completely. It might be one person that's supposed to be transportation and instead of correction officer. So that may make it a shift. Within the line. But total, it's fine.
That's awful high for one person's difference. So, 45 grand is an awful lot. Thank you.
Other questions for the treasurer?
The report that you were just both reviewing, I believe it was emailed to us, but it's not being provided to us this evening. And I guess I'd like to try to make sure that we not only receiving these emails, but get our copies in the
Oh,
future.
that's my reporting,
Yeah,
the Excel thing, sure.
it's emailed, but
Yeah,
right now, Isaiah obviously was very good about printing it. I was not.
okay. I'm sorry
So
about that.
I guess I'm asking if we could be
Okay.
provided a hard copy.
Sure. In the future, I will make sure you have that.
Okay, no.
Okay, we do vote on this report, all in favor, or I guess I need a motion, excuse me. Being the treasurer's report.
Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
I'll second.
And all in favor? And opposed?
Respectfully opposed. Thank you.
Administrators report.
Okay, just very quickly, Facilities Director Dave Cody and I, we've been working with Competitive Energy Services. We have worked with them for a number of years in our energy purchases. And this is regarding the renewable energy and securing lower cost. I did sign a contract for them to find us the appropriate partner for the renewable energy. And so they're out there beating the bushes right now to find what would best work for Androscoggin County. That will, you have in the, it's blue and white copy. It potentially, their estimate is it could save us a significant amount of money over the next 20 years. Clarice and I continue to work with the American Rescue Plan Act, funding, the rules, the appropriate expenditures under the rules. And we are requesting tonight approval for the projects that we've identified so that we can move forward with much needed upgrades that we are now able to do. The budget is still being worked on. It'll be finalized and given to commissioners at the next meeting on August 4th for budget review starting August 11th. I did meet with my colleagues in Maine Association of County Clerks, Administrators, and Managers as to what we all know and are doing with our rescue funds. And reviewing the actions of the legislature to ensure that we're aware of new laws that may affect us. And I'm working on a remote participation policy, which we must have to continue any further remote meetings.
Okay. Any questions for,
I have a question.
yes,
Can you explain to me how this works? So we go into contract for them to find somebody and then how does the whole process work?
Okay, what happens with them? They will find us an energy provider. The estimated savings is down on the bottom there. That's just an estimate, but that's what they estimate. We discovered that this company, and again, it's one that we've dealt with since I've been here and before, they could save us twice what you all got a proposal or request from another company. This company will save us twice what that company would, because there are two pots of money involved. The other one would only allow us to have one pot.
Okay.
So anyway, what happens is if they find us an appropriate company, the savings, they'll get 10% of what we save over the years.
Okay. Seems like a no-brainer to go solar.
So what is, sorry,
Yeah, go right ahead.
so what is the federal government or something is subsidizing our electricity?
They're
or-
estimating, because it's subsidized and so on, and this apparently is on its way to completion. And we're not on the ground floor, we're near the end of that proposals for solar funding. They estimate that we'll save, what, $38,000 a year.
So you made a comment earlier, something about two pots of money, I guess.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? I'm not following you.
Okay, let me see if I can, because I'm not sure I fully understand it either. But part of it is they can explain.
I'm having fun right now. So what it is, you have the solar fields that will save you, we'll say, $15,000. That is our share. And then they also have things called the race points, which is the greenhouse gases. They'll give us those as well. Some of the competitors will only give us the savings from the solar fields, not the points that go with it. So we can keep the points, and that'll help. The state of Maine will say for going green, or we can sell the points and bring in a revenue. That's how we would get the additional savings, is by selling the points every year. Or we could keep them and not allow other factories from reducing greenhouse gases. That's a choice you guys have to make every year.
Commissioner Kelly?
I'm concerned about the fact that it seems to be we have to sign into a 20-year agreement. That seems an awfully long commitment.
That's what we thought too, and that's what all of those agreements are. And yes,
I mean, are we posing any risk to ourselves by signing such a?
no, because essentially what happens is if something goes south and the agreement goes away, then it just goes away. We're not obligated any further.
What is the definition of south?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good question.
Let's say the producer of the solar energy discontinues business, then obviously they're not going to sell us their energy, and we're under no further obligation.
If the subsidy goes away, so does that.
But if the costs of solar goes higher than the standard rate, where does that contract go? Because I believe the town of Lisbon was negotiating something where they had an out if they found out standard rate was lower. There was something in the paper reported to that effect. And I'm not saying the paper's accurate in what they reported. Don't mean to be but either that or I may have misinterpreted what was written.
And essentially, this only takes effect if we sign with an energy producer. We don't sign with an energy producer, there's no harm, no foul.
Right, I understand that. But I think we
We'll
as,
find out once we venture into the next contract. Since we don't have that contract in hand, we don't really know the facts. This contract is just allow them to look for us.
question, does the next contract has to be approved by the board or do you have the authority? And I'm just asking, being new on the board here.
We would bring the solar, if there is a solar contract that they find, we would bring that.
Yes, Commissioner Medora.
Thank you. Generally, I think the premise sounds pretty good, but I'll say, we're looking big picture. One things I see on here is that it talks about the size of the solar fields that they have. Now, any solar field that's less than 5 megawatts or megawatts, it's tax exempt. And so that poses a problem for our municipalities, and I'm not really a fan of supporting that, despite all the benefits for the environment and climate change. But it's something to consider when we're looking at something like this, is that when we support things like this, to some extent, it kind of looks like we're going to be supporting facilities that won't be paying property taxes. Now, some towns have negotiated with those entities to come up with some sort of payment in lieu of taxes or payment of taxes for that, but it's something to consider.
Madam Chair. So what is the difference between this and just going with the standard rate? What is the benefit? Is this to feel good and green, or is this going to save the taxpayer money? I mean, a 20-year contract, that is a heck of a long time. Even 5 or 10-year contracts I've seen, that seems to be renewable stuff gets into that, and then you wind up paying. Sometimes you're getting nothing for. I guess I just have real concerns about not just going with the standard electricity offer. If people want to spend money on, if the ratepayers, if the taxpayers want to spend money on green energy, and they want to buy through whoever, I think there's like 15 different carrier companies now, then that's their choice, but I don't want to be making those sort of decisions, especially a 20-year commitment with their tax dollars. And while we hear there's an out, it always winds up getting really messy, and you wind up having to drag lawyers into it. So I guess I'm just a little nervous about us going into something like this. Let's let the ratepayers and the taxpayers decide if they're going to actually spend that kind of money to feel green.
From what I found from reading different contracts, we do have an out, which is pretty much sell our shares. And then the company that we're dealing with now, it would be our broker to sell it for us.
If there's a market for those, if that's going south, that would be typically a reason that people wouldn't want to buy those shares. I'm just uncomfortable with this on many facets, including the green energy climate change mania. So I'm opposed to this. But.
So CES is currently looking for people we can buy from. And we've contracted with them at this point. They don't get paid until we contract with a energy provider. And I think the question was already asked, but when it comes time to contract with an energy provider, will that come back to the board?
Any other commissioners? I'd like to open this up. We've got a number of people here from towns and community. Do you have any questions or comments you'd like to add to this conversation?
Who's the contract with?
It's
CES Maine Renewable.
Diane just let us know that Tom Elizabeth, to the point was actually made signed to the Amoresco. to get third party looking at it. So this is not the only company that's associated with that. So we have the same concern that you're raising associated with the 20-year agreement. And we have an out clause associated with all of the sign on. Again, for the record, it's $760,000. $30,000 a year in that regard, so it should have your attention, but it isn't the only key.
Could you give us that name again, please?
Amoresco, I believe is what Diane just told me.
So we went through Titan Energy. They were like the broker. They went out and bid for us. They came back with proposals. I could send Larry that information.
I'm sure you'd like that, but yes, I think that'd be
But
great.
the solar project that we bought into is going to be happening right here in Worcester.
Madam Chair, was there any discussion about the tax exempt status of some of these solar fields?
No, because it doesn't pertain to Lisbon, because it's not in Lisbon. So we didn't have
Okay.
that discussion. We didn't need to.
That makes sense. We were thinking of doing a great big contract and putting these solar panels in Lisbon.
Anyone else? Okay, are we ready to move on? All right, it's,
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Is any action being requested of the board at this time regarding this information that's been presented to us?
I don't believe so.
And we have entered into a contract with CES to go find this? Right.
The way I understand, there's been no money paid out and no money expected unless they bring us a contract that we approve.
That's correct.
True, but my understanding was that we did enter into a contract with CES, is that correct? And then we would go into a contract with a company that would be providing that electricity. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Can I say one more time? I want to confirm. Who's the contact you had there? His name's Eric, I don't remember his last name.
This is just a PowerPoint.
Well, some brokers are better than others. The fact is, I'm trying to remember, it's the same firm associated with CES that I feel is all too, that I wouldn't have any issue with, because I thought they're out of Portland, it's the same firm. There are organizations associated with that, but again, they're broker, which are your interest.
Do you know if this is CES out of Portland?
Yes.
Okay.
Say that with regard to that contract, we actually have that firm find one for us, and we had a couple of attorneys, as I had said. But then our attorney reviewed the proposed contract, and that's where some of the language was changed.
And it took us about 4 months to go back to come to an agreement, but we got there. Satisfied all of us.
Al, can we get a copy of that contract?
Yeah, the contract I'm talking about is the one that we ended up with, Amoresco, not the broker that found it.
Yeah. We'd love to see that. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. That's been helpful. With the reports here is in your packet is the sheriff's report. And I guess I just want to, I wish I could put it in red and hold it. I would have, if I wrote it. The facility received 100% score, and I'm assuming this acronym is for Maine Department of Corrections biannual inspection. With the budget we give you, that's extraordinary. Okay. There's, for the entire section of reports, anything else? Or are you ready to move on? Yes.
In Larry's report, on the second paragraph, you wrote, we are requesting approval for the projects identified. Are you looking for a vote from us on that?
Yes.
Oh, that's a new business, sorry. Yes. For the line sign. Didn't see it.
Okay, comments from the public. And anyone online? Okay, thank you.
And just make sure that you let folks know how to request it. I've dealt with some of these systems and they can be pretty squirrely trying to figure out how to raise their hand or,
Coming in, that's 4 or 5 minutes.
okay, thank you.
Audit presentation. Yes.
Good evening. I'm Ron Smith, principal with RHR Smith and Company, and I'm here to present your 2020 December year-end audit, catch you up to date and answer any and all questions you guys may have. I'm not going to go through, I see you guys, some of you have, some of you don't. I'm not going to go through all 95 pages. I'm sure of that, unless you want me to bore you. But how about I hit the highlights like I did last year and answer some questions and just go through some talking points, that we had through the exercise. So overall, 12/31/2020, the county ended its year. Well, to tell you a little bit about myself, we do 11 counties and the jail authority in the state of Maine. So we know a lot about who you are and what you are and a lot what's going on out there in your profession. And we do, I think, a third of all the municipalities in the state of Maine as well. So we got some understanding. If you got any general questions regarding, connecting dots, I'm certainly here to answer those too. So the county ended the year $1.5 million of carryover balance, which was $15,000 less than what you ended last year. So now I'm going to break it down for you. Last year, you ended with about $900,000 of unassigned fund balance, which is money that's not like attached to anything that you use for tax relief or things like that, carry forwards. This year, you ended with about $1 million. So the county went in with its budget into 2020, expecting your fund balance to go down by about $400,000 because you used $200,000 for carryover balance to balance your budget. And then I think there was a little more than $200,000 in dedicated reserves and carry forwards for specified projects, that you would have had in 2020. So the theory is that $1.5 million would have gone down to about $1.1 million by just the simple math, because you expected to use some of that money for various things, including tax relief. It didn't. It stayed the same. And the reason why it stayed the same wasn't revenue related, because your revenues were within $17,000 of budget. It was expense related. So it was about $400,000 of expenses that you returned to the bottom line. And that's why you were able to not use, that $400,000 with the expectations, that you expected when you put your 2020 budget together. And I think that's good news. And I think when you go back and do the comparisons over the past 4 years, financially, this is some of the best financial condition that the county of Androscoggin's been in since those times. So hats off to you all. In addition to that, the jail's kind of skewed, as far as financially, because December 31st really doesn't paint that picture, because the jail fiscal year end is June 30th. But carrying into the last 6 months of the jail fiscal year end, in addition to that $1.5 million, you had about $650,000, left over on December 31st to carry forward to get you through the next 6 months, of your jail budget for that fiscal year. And in addition to that, I think the other highlight of note is that the deed surcharge, which is a mechanism, as people come in and do the property tax transfers and any deed exchanges, the state has a mechanism where they collect a portion of that, and you keep a portion. You've got about $250,000 sitting in reserve account for for the statutory specifications on what you can use for that money. So that's the financial highlights, for December 31st, 2020. Anything of interest there? Yeah, I think when you bring in a $14.5 million budget and bring your revenues in $17,000 of expectations, even though that's still a lot of tax money, out there, that's not a really big room for error. So I still think hats off that you were able to financially grow, and maintain, more importantly, through, quite frankly, I'm not sure how even to describe the last year and a half financially in the world of government. And I've been doing this for 30 years. So, and I know you've got some representation in front of you in one of your municipalities right in back of me. So it has been probably one of the most challenging, difficult years to really kind of prognosticate the world of government out there, given, some of this relief money that you see coming towards you. The last probably signs and likes of it was back in 2008 with the ERA money and the funds that came in that form of stimulus. And there's no comparison in my, humble professional opinion. And as I've been telling my governments and local governments, and we do plenty of them, don't spend outside your means. Don't get out of there. Don't create the programs that you think that may, have attached money down the future. You got to be really careful. I know that there's a lot of money that's been offered to the world of government, including counties, including municipalities. There's a lot of infrastructure money coming, into this state and into this country. We still don't know when. We know kind of what for, but we don't know when. And a lot of people still haven't seen that money. But I've heard a lot of talk about government trying to create programs and, create positions. And my caution to the wind is, as you do these things, and in 2 or 3 years, when this funding is not available, it runs out. I saw this back in 2008, and the concern was positions went away, programs went away, community programs went away. So I would just caution that, given the county government, given, the fact of who you are and the second largest county in the state, as far as for on many fronts, be careful what you do with the stimulus money. I think it's great. I think it's a blessing, that we've got access to this money, but I also think it needs to come with some thought and some forecasting over the next 2 or 3 years. And I'll continue to give this advice because I saw what happened in 2008 and I saw some things that didn't end well from some governments. And I just throw that caution to the wind to you all. So, yeah. That's the highlights. There were some talking points. I think you got a copy of the management letter. County government it's different, and again, I've been doing this for 30 years. I think I've worked with every county in the state of Maine, and what a lot of people don't realize is that you've got some mandated, some regulation out there for things that you don't really even control, like registry of deeds. That really is a function of the state. The district attorney's office is really a function of the state. The jail, I would argue, is really a function of the state. So where am I trying to go? Your jail administrators, your district attorneys and their administrative assistants, your registry of deeds and their administrators, they're all required to mandate these state regulations. And they operate independent businesses in there that affect your business, because of the paperwork, that's required to be maintained. So we had a couple of comments in there, really, just the struggles, out there, and COVID, posed some struggles too, out there from your independent businesses, in specific the DAs, just was kind of like the software conversion and some of the things that went down that impact your finance office. So there's really nothing you can do about it except communicate. And there's nothing I can raise my hand and say, foul, foul, fire, fire. I think Clarice did a great job, understanding and mandating and really trying to make the work, but make the work work. But that's not part of your financial statement. These are independent businesses because of the state, out there that are operating not only in your county, but every county. And that really poses some challenges and some strains resourcefully, with human resources, financially, and just an extra layer, quite frankly, of an administrative burden, for the county. And there's a couple of comments in there and some suggestions that we made, Clarice, which are certainly no indication, of you guys, and who you are and what you do. More of the process, more of the state, more of their mandate, as far as what you do and how you do it, even though it's their programs. So surcharge, one of those. So anyway, I think that there's still been a lot of effort even by, the various departments that maintain these businesses out there, within the county. Nothing that we see, that urgent, but there's not a one software that fits all is where I'm going, and as much as you can try, it doesn't exist out there. There's so many independent softwares because of these other, programs that exist that are maintained by the state that really, quite frankly, affect your administration too, in Clarice's office. So there's a couple of comments in there, regarding that, and one of them is OPEB. About 3 years ago, maybe going on 4 now with this year, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board birthed some statements that basically said, and they call it OPEB. It's other post-employment benefits. Okay, and it's different than retirement. Okay, so basically it's every benefit that you've got that's not named retirement. And every 3 years, you're supposed to get an actuarial valuation, and it could be 2 years depending on who you are, but not in, I believe, Androscoggin County's case, every 3 years. Well, when the information was provided by the County of Androscoggin to its actuaries, to crunch the math on these other post-employment benefits, and what's the big one? Health insurance. You used to have, and still do, still in effect, a collectively bargained agreement, when people retired, based on their agreement that the county pays for, the portion of their health insurance. And some of those people still work here. Some of those people retired already. So the government standards say, we'd like you to put a value on it. It has no financial implications on you because you budget for it every year. But the value went from like $23 million to $30 million. And one of the things that we had told Clarice and Larry is maybe talk to another actuary, just regarding how that math was, because it was a big jump, from one to the other. But it's nothing to be concerned about. It's something that you've always taken care of. I'm not sure any new enrollees are even eligible, for that benefit now. So that's gone away, but still you're required, because you can't go back and take it away. You're required, to put a value on that. And what is it in Androscoggin County's term? 30 million. I can tell you some other counties are as high as $50 million. I won't say who, but there's some big numbers, out there, and you budget for that every year. And that's one of the things that we had told Clarice and Larry, maybe to just get another set of eyes, on that one, just to verify the math, for lack of a better way, no financial impact, but hey, that's a big number. Are we missing any details, in this thing, as far as coming up with our actuarial estimations, and what they use for science? So other than that, that's about all I have for 12/31/20. I think Clarice has done a great job given software conversions before. And, when the jail, when they kind of tried to separate that out from everything, there was a lot of cleanup work that needed to be done. And that's happened. And I think that, the county today is better than where the county was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And that's all I would simply say. I think that you guys continue to progress, and, and I think that that's what you look for, throughout that exercise. So.
I love those comments, but I want to be quick to state the obvious, that the credit for that goes to the administrator and the cooperation of the department heads. They just work with us so cooperatively, and I can't say enough about them, and the credit for those comments goes to them. There's 5 of them in this room, and they're the ones, they're the heroes.
Like I say, the conversations don't all roll this way. I'm going to one county where I can tell you it's going to be a different conversation, and those aren't pleasant. They aren't pleasant. So.
Okay, questions for the
You mentioned the OBEP.
OPEB.
OPEB. You're saying it's not affecting our financials, but then I see in this copy here that we're thinking about having it done by a different actuary. Why would we do that if it doesn't affect the financials?
So a couple of things. One is to make sure that the actuary, it's actually recommended when there's that large valuation, as far as whatever. So remember, an actuary is not a science. An actuary is based upon education, I won't say guesses. That's not a good word in fairness to the actuaries, but there's a process that goes on. We don't know what that process is. We know what the county provides for them. We don't know really at the end of the day how the math arrived from their end. And with that jump, I think it was like $7 million. And I get healthcare is like out of control. You know, that big of a jump, you know, and to look into whether or not somebody else might make a different estimation than your current actuary. That's all we're saying. That might be worth a look. That might be worth a look. It's not going to change. It's not going to change how you budget for you financially. You pay that every year as the bill's presented to you. But as far as saying what your responsibility is, you know, and maybe someday down the road where this thing gets so out of control and this thing becomes a necessary part of the budget and the county of Androscoggin says, we want to go get a note. I mean, we're putting $500,000 a year, you know, towards this matter here. And we could go finance this thing and infuse it, you know, and make that problem go away. And I've seen some governments do that. I'm not telling Androscoggin County to do that because it's not time, but you want good information before you do any of that. And all I'm saying is, what's the harm? You know, maybe $4,000 to go have somebody else see if they arrive at the same math and conclusions that your actuary did. That's all.
I guess I'm not seeing value, because if you're telling me,
And I'm not
then
saying
I'm
you
gonna
have
spend
to.
four
Not saying
thousand,
you have to.
I don't understand the value
Yeah.
that you're pursuing. But I understand actuaries are, it's a mathematical crystal ball, and I know what you're saying about actuaries. Fully understand.
But if it came, think about it though, if it came time to say, okay, what am I addressing for a future problem? Is it 23 million?
We'll need
Is it
to
30
do it-
million?
We'll need to do a study at that time that's more accurate. I
Exactly.
mean, regardless, if we want
Yeah.
to fund it, is what you said,
And that's what we're saying.
I would have to go out and get an actuary to do an up-to-date one. The actuary's report of 2021 will serve me no value other than getting me a ballpark of what I'm looking at in 2025 or wherever. There's no value in getting another.
I'm not sure I'm gonna agree though, so, but I'm not gonna take any more of your time, but I'd love to talk to you privately about it.
All right.
Anyone else a question or for the auditor?
Madam Chair. I notice under the page 4 in the required supplementary information management discussion analysis, it says unaudited. So is the management discussion not audited by?
That's
sorry.
your section. That's your section. That's the county of Androscoggin. That's the chance where you get to say, we agree or we don't disagree
Yeah.
with the audit and the numbers. So I have no say over that,
Yeah.
which is hence the word unaudited. That's your.
Okay,
your-
so that's
your
just
section.
basically sort of a legal thing of just you showing this is not my product, this is,
Yeah,
okay.
this is your.
The administrator's
where you
product.
Get the
Okay.
opportunity to explain, you know,
Okay.
your year in general. And if we have any disagreements, you get the opportunity says, I don't agree with Ron, or one of your commissioners says, we don't agree, you know, with Ron. That's why that's in a management letter, not your financial statements, unaudited.
Yeah, we didn't, I don't think I've ever seen this management discussion, so it's not really, I can't speak for the commission, but I can't say it's certainly not my as a commissioner product. So, okay, thank you. Were there any, I was trying to look through just to see if there's a summary. Were there any recommendations of changes? Obviously, I'm pleased to hear that we've been able to keep things reasonably budget-wise, but any red flags? Typically with audits, there's do this, do that, you know, sometimes there's small.
Some of the suggestions with software, you know, there's another separate letter, and I don't know if you have that in front of you or not, but there was another separate letter where we made some recommendations
Okay, in this audit report?
beside that report.
Okay, all
And
right,
one of them, I think, is the gentleman right here that was referring to the OPEB.
okay. Probably this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Pleasure, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, moving on to the approval, I guess do we need to vote on the auditor's report, or can we take a week to digest it a little more?
That's up to you.
Are you ready to vote to accept it, or do you want a little bit of time to?
Kind of like a little bit of time to read it over and digest.
I agree.
We'll put it on the agenda for next week then. Let me write that down. Accept the audit. Moving on to the approval of the American Rescue Plan Act expenditures product, and in your email, you got a list of recommendations of the
Most of this we have had discussion about before and have gone through, and it's probably time to start moving on some of these things. The accounting software for the treasurer's office of $70,540. HVAC system for courthouse and jail. The updated estimate is $5,403,000. Employee COVID pay, $660,000. Body scanner for the jail, we already have, is $159,000. Space needs analysis for public safety, we've already approved that expenditure out of this of $36,000. The renovation of the probate office, $173,134. IT of $150,000. Commissioners setting up all that we need for remote meetings and so on. And I was flabbergasted when I saw the estimate, but the estimate's $150,000. And they're needing to have another trial assistant for the DA's office to catch up on some of the backlog. That's $50,000.
I know there's going to be some of these that are going to have some discussion. Are there any of them that you don't feel like there's discussion and you're ready to move forward? Well, let's take a few of them out if there's any that can go out, and then we can go back and hash out the ones that need discussion. Yes, Commissioner Ames.
I had a question. I'll wait till after.
Okay, is there anything there that you would like to move forward on, and then we'll take up the ones that need some further explanation, so we can keep it, sort of simplify it a little bit.
Chair, I don't really feel comfortable voting, even though I'm very supportive of much of this. I don't feel comfortable voting on any single one of these right now, because I had really imagined there'd be more of a plan presented to us. Obviously, I'm quite supportive of COVID pay for the employees, and I said that last time, but I had imagined that we would be presented with a plan with details. And the same with a lot of this. I can't vote on something without having a plan. And obviously I'm supportive of pretty much every single thing, one of these, but I don't know, I haven't heard anything about the details on much of any of them, like, you know, the meeting rooms and IT, whatever that is. Trial assistant, that seems very, you know, very much needed right now with the backlog, but like, you know, what's the background on that? Body scanner, it's quite a bit less than I think what they had budgeted for. I don't know what it actually cost.
That's the actual cost.
5.4 million for HVAC. You know, I know you talked about getting a plan, but like now you're asking us to approve it. We're like, I don't know. I just had really imagined more of a plan, treasury software. I really had imagined some justification for that, like what's going on with that. Like, I know our auditor last year had recommendations regarding that, and it sounded pretty reasonable, but you know, it's a lot of money. Instead of everything getting ported over, what's that all about? So I don't know. Right now, I don't feel comfortable voting on any one of them.
I agree with Commissioner Madore. I don't feel there is enough information given on any of these, you know, proposals. Like the DA trial assistant, why is that part of the American Rescue Plan? Why is that
That-
justified? I don't
That's
understand that.
that's specifically in the interim final rule.
Yeah. I mean, it would just be nice to see more information, more justification, where does it say that? I don't know. Just more information in general would be, you know, wonderful. Yeah. Yes.
I concur. I'd like to see more information, more detail. Spreadsheet on breakdown of some of the stuff. So it's a little slim, just as numbers.
In some of the cases, I will tell you, in some of the cases, for example, the We had an original estimate of the HVAC system of $2.5 million. That was 2 years ago. Obviously, the cost is going to go up just on, and we have added central air as opposed to, and do away with all of the air conditioners and windows and so on. But as part of that, you're already going to incur costs to get those updated estimates and all of that. So just so that you're aware that
Well, what kind of costs? To get the updates, the administrator says to get updates on some of these numbers, and I guess details, will incur some costs. Any idea what that would be?
Still waiting for the records.
I do think we should move forthwith soon on the HVAC system. Get that moving along. I think everyone pretty much agrees on spending the money for that. That doesn't mean we vote on it today necessarily, but I would like to see that move forward.
I mean, yeah,
Sure.
because like for the 2.5, we had a considerable amount of backup and how it was going to be. This is just like a one line. so
well,
I-
this,
yeah.
this is, they still have to finish their, this is an estimate before they really have done all of their background work.
So we're really not ready to vote on that anyways, because we don't know the number.
The purpose is, are we going to do it or are we not? And, you know, if we're not, then there's no point in doing any further engineering. If we are, then you're right, we're already saying we're going to, you know, incur some cost to do the engineering.
Madison.
Roland?
Again, on the heat, the system. My understanding last month or the month before, I'm not sure, you were hiring an engineering company that was going to draw up specs, and then we would be going out to bid.
Right.
You paying that engineering company 5.4 million? Is that what
No,
you're trying to
no,
tell
no.
me? Then, okay,
Projects.
okay, so they have already completed their project?
The engineer, but he's still working on the scope with how much
Okay,
they share and how much the job's
So-
gonna roll out.
so there's no way that you know this 5.4 is accurate then?
That's
If your
their-
engineering is not done, you are bringing us very, I don't know how to say this politely, but you're just throwing a dart at a dart at the 5.4.
This is the engineer's estimate at the beginning of the project.
Okay.
That's-
I agree with John Michael that we definitely hire an engineer, and I guess I would gladly approve spending that money tonight to get that preliminary work done. But my understanding was that after that, concerning, there would be a bidding of different contractors to do the work.
It will be.
And at that point, we will approve that dollar amount at that point. But you seem to saying you want to know now that we'll do that. And I'm a, you know, it's the egg and the chicken here.
Essentially, what we're asking is to move forward with those projects. That, you know, it sounds logical based on the fact we've talked about doing that for 2 years. It sounded logical that you would vote to move forward with all of those projects. And obviously, there's steps along the way, you know, for, as you say, you know, you go out to bid and accept the bids and so on and so forth, and those numbers will change somewhat. But this is the estimates that we have currently.
Well, don't we want to make sure that the Harriman continues with their engineering and then provide us with a report that'll confirm this number or something close to it, up or down? That seems like the step that we'd be making now. I mean, we're not going to commit, the request is not for us to commit to $5.4 million today, really, is it? Because then we've got the, assessment.
That is only the estimated cost at this point.
What would we be voting on? If we voted yes on that today, what would we have voted on?
To move forward with all of these projects.
Well, I'd like to see us move forward with the engineering part of the HVAC. And then at some point, we'll get a engineering report and proposal. So if there's money that needs to be authorized for that, I think we should move forward doing that. Well, it's a question right now.
Did we already have that going?
Do they need
Last
more money?
meeting, we might have already voted.
Thought we already voted for an
Go back and
engineer.
check.
I think we did, yeah.
Okay.
So is any more money needed?
Not at the moment.
Okay. I don't know. COVID pay, is there anything debatable about that? I don't know.
Other than it'd be nice to see, you know, at least a number, you know, a breakdown instead of just the total, so we know exactly what we're voting on. Some of the things, some of these others, like this trial assistant, I like, is that a temporary position, or are we looking to put on a trial position that when the COVID, when the rescue money's gone, now this is part of our budget forever?
As
I
of
don't
right
want to
now,
increase our budget.
as of
forever.
right now, we're looking at a temporary.
I mean, I don't want to spend any of this money on anything that's going to, once the money is gone, now we have a
And
bigger
the-
budget.
The person
Great.
that, the person that is a temporary is eventually going to become one of the attorneys. And so that's going to take care of itself.
That would be some, you know, like that kind of, sorry. Chair, if I could, that kind of thing would be really helpful, I think, for us to make, you know, those decisions. Say, where there was like, you know, a page on each of them, you know, bare minimum. But on the bigger picture, one of the reasons why I had suggested expanding the scope of the heating, cooling situation was because I was hopeful that if we expanded it, it would more clearly fit into the requirements that the money coming to us has. But clearly, you know, as we've learned more, the requirements are a bit looser than what I had imagined. And so I'm not saying that I'm opposed to this expanded scope. But what on the other side of my mind, I'm thinking about, you know, what is the remainder after these 9 things? What is the remainder of the money that we're gonna have?
In $158,000.
How much?
Thank you.
$3,158,000
Of the money that's currently in.
that we currently have. That's not the additional that we get next year.
And then on my mind are the results of the space study. Because that, you know, whatever the end project is of that is going to be a very expensive project. And so just trying to anticipate what that's going to be and keeping in mind, you know, what is needed and what's not. That's just what's on my mind, and the remainder money and future needs, and clearly, you know, the basement or whatever the end result of that is I think more important than having cooling in our offices. As important as that is for the 21st century standards of an office, cleaning, you know, having a solution to the sheriff's office space and or the other, you know, capital needs is extremely important. And, you know, we need to anticipate that to some extent. So just, those are my thoughts.
I would say that the one item that I do feel comfortable with funding right now is the body scanner. We included it in our budget last year. It's already in our possession. You know, why not?
We already bought it.
We already had the full presentation on
Yeah.
everything. I'd be okay with that one.
You know, we've seen it.
In our office.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it too. It's here. It's in the jail. It's in the building.
And I need to close out the jail and this will affect that.
Madam Chair.
That's, say that again, Clarice, so
I
everybody
need
can
to
hear that.
close
That's an
out the
important
last
point.
fiscal year of the jail, and that will affect it. So if you could vote on that tonight, that would be really good.
I'm fine to vote on the body scanner.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I guess what I'm having a hard time understanding is how, my understanding this is all supposed to be related to COVID. So how does a body scanner relate to COVID? I'm having a hard time seeing where that, maybe it's in there somehow. For me, not anything against you or the office, but I'm just saying for me, that doesn't pass a straight face test. How does a body scanner protect from COVID?
think
In terms of the inmates coming in. Sheriff wants to address that also.
Real briefly. Obviously, it's a body scanner, so during COVID times, it would stop. I wouldn't have to pat Jeff down, so to say. I could have him go in the machine. As it goes in, it takes your picture, takes your temperature, and it actually, part of the training involved not only detecting contraband, but detecting for medical issues. So, and actually TriTech comes on with saying it's a qualifying thing. So I would say if it does fall into suit, which it does meet by, it allows us not to have to touch people with social distance, it takes your temperature, sign COVID. It's in your best interest to take rescue funds, I would think, to make the purchase rather than the taxpayer open. But that's just my opinion. It would be in everybody's best interest.
Well, I suppose it seems like we probably have a consensus and a request from the treasurer to specifically at least put that one forward as a vote and use the rescue money for that purpose. So if everyone's comfortable with that, I'll make a motion to that end.
Can I get your exact motion? I'm
Yeah,
sort of-
absolutely. Yeah, is everyone cool with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to utilize $159,000 of the American Rescue Plan expenditures for the purchase of a body scanner for the jail.
I second that motion.
Madam Chair?
He talks a lot faster than I write. Okay, and Commissioner Kelly? Seconded? Yes, Commissioner Michael.
Any reason why we couldn't add the space needs analysis, which is already approved? previously?
Oh, we already
approved that one.
We already approved, so we don't have to address that.
You don't
It
need
can
to.
be taken off the list. So. Oh, no, okay.
Okay, any other discussion about the body cam?
I'll further add for our minutes that the body scanner is undoubtedly beneficial for the jail for the purposes of the requirements outlined in the American Rescue Plan.
Okay.
Go on.
Okay, good.
Madam Chair,
Progress. Yes, sir.
In public or representing the budget advisory committee now?
Yes.
The fact that this item actually went for the budget advisory last year's budget, so it clearly makes sense. Some of the other items are actually discussed. The trial assistant, is that a new position or is that one that was added last year? Because you will hear from members on that committee that you're adding a position, that you're funding with grant funding that will create a cliff the following year. Is actually being picked up. Second, associated with that, the software that's actually on this list, are you confident that it actually is going to be paid for from this funding or you will pay it back? The one item that I've heard in my capacity that is clearly here, that you have best latitude in the case to make, is anything associated with the HVAC, because that's the one standard that's actually out there. I think you have a good argument with Sheriff Sampson for getting him out of the basement associated with the facilities to address that. That will eat up the lion's share associated with that money pretty darn quick associated with it. The one point that I would actually make on the HVAC is that 5.4, you want to be extremely conscious of, because that's a slippery slope, because everybody in the nation is actually working towards that same goal to find an HVAC contractor to be able to get on board associated with that. And it is extremely critical because the price is going to go up because they can get it in that regard. So be clear on that estimate, be conservative on that estimate, and don't overcommit what you're actually expecting of that $20 million because it will go quickly. And I would appreciate that the fact that it actually goes through, that we're 1 month out from you guys actually going to the budget. Any of these that actually aren't in current discussion, that haven't gone through a budget discussion, it probably would be best to get it rather than actually deal with the animosity that I will have to field on your behalf representing the budget. Take it for what it is.
Mr. Ward, just thank you for your comments. When you're asking for us to vet it, do you mind just describing quickly what sort of what you're envisioning, just so we, if the board so chooses, we can try to meet that?
Making sure that, my understanding with those these funds, if that isn't eligible, if all the funds that are actually out there, you have to go through a process to be able to go back to be able to look to say that it actually meets the criteria, but what the definition is that's still being written right now associated with that. So if you put something on that list, and then you vote to it, you actually expend the funds, you may not get reimbursed accordingly. You may get stuck with a load that's actually going out to the taxpayers that pay the county budget.
Madam Chair, would something in that regard, some sort of an out, as we were earlier discussing with the electricity, something in that sense of this is awarded contingent upon this being approved by the federal government for the use of these funds, you know, some sort of disclaimer like that, would that potentially have give us that protection for the taxpayer?
I don't think you can, all due respect, I don't think you can do I don't think you can do the crystal ball thing with the federal government. It's not gonna work in that regard. If the body scanner is actually being, I heard the presentation, I think you've got an extremely good case. There'll be a lot of back and forth or the justification at best. But I believe you'll see the light, that one will be fine. It's just when you look further down that list of other items, it'll be harder to be able to press and figure out why a software package actually meets the needs of code. The backlog of the trial assistant you probably can do some, but budgetary impact when we have to pick it up on the backside, it's just a simple.
Before us is.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just because we were discussing that and kind of start discussing other things. I understand the logic for the body scanner. I guess what I would like to know from the sheriff is if there is a letter on file stating that from that company stating that it meets those requirements, because then they have some liability that we can always fall back on. Yes, we budgeted for it. I am opposed to this idea, but I do think I understand the logic of trying to use this money to pay for it. I would just point out, even if it's a medical grade device, I'm sure we could get a temperature scanner. I doubt, I'm almost certain we probably have one at the jail that even at $3,000, it's still a whole lot cheaper. And that's just because it's a medical device. It's probably the same thing as something you get at Harbor Freight. I shop there, sorry.
Yes, we have a letter from the company saying it qualifies under the event. Other agencies have used that. We bought the machine, actually thinking that, but not sure because they want to apply to do that. They were going to do it, and then everything changed with how it was done, and the county's just got $10 million a year. So I went forward with the budget committee's recommendation that we had budgeted. Looking into it after, I believe it was discovered we could use it. Actually, there's nothing that makes more sense, even though it takes your temperature, it allows for social distancing and there's no contact. I mean, we don't use it that way. We use it in addition to, but if times get tough again, that's what they're projecting for the fall. Now we have a way to bring people in and not have to actually physically touch them and have some reassurance that they're not bringing contact.
Question. So,
Oh, you're moving the question. Oh, okay.
One other question I do have is, are we foreseeing, Sheriff, putting inmates through this scanner on a daily basis or weekly basis somewhere where, granted, some people may give assurances that it is safe, but I would just be concerned if we're making people go through it all the time for temperature taking purposes. So.
We, any new admission goes through it unless they're pregnant.
Yep.
And if you come down, if we ever come here, go back to the days of contact visits before you return to population. So if there's movement, where you're outside the secure facility or new to the facility, if people go to the hospital, come back, they're gonna be went through it. It's for the protection, for the benefit of us.
My concern is that it start being used for that temperature taking if we decide to do daily temperature.
No, it was gonna use it for that.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I call the question.
It's just when it just-
I'm sorry.
The policy that we drafted states when it will be used. We want it used. but more for due to the facility and movement within the facility.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I call the question?
Okay, Commissioner Poirier had his hand up.
Fine, if she can call it.
Okay, all
That's
right. All right. We have a motion and a second and calling the question of using the funds for payment of the body scan. All in favor?
Madam Chair, or
Opposed?
of calling, I'm trying to understand what we're voting on, calling the question or of approving the body scanner.
Calling the question.
Thank you. Opposed?
So we can call the question. All in favor of going ahead and authorizing the treasurer to use emergency funds for this item. Opposed? All right, let's. Could we put up, we've got such a heavy agenda, could we put off one meeting, the appointment of MCCA risk pool? Are you okay with that, Commissioner Medora? That would mean you're staying in that position for another 2 weeks.
Yeah, I will be here next meeting and I have asked Larry to take my place in those. So that will be represented well.
Could I have a motion then to table item 8D?
Madam Chair, motion to table item 8D, appointment of the MC representative to the MCCA risk pool, AMCOG representative.
Thank you. We've got just a packed schedule this week. Second to that? All in favor of, do we vote on tabling? Yeah, I guess we do. All in favor of tabling this item until next week or next meeting? Opposed? All right.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I like to echo your concerns about our timeline today, and I'm looking to table 8C, the Cuban resolution.
Cuban Freedom Resolution, Madam Chair.
Okay, a second to that? All those in favor of moving the vote on that resolution to our next meeting? Opposed? Commissioner Larry, I'll let you read your resolution. Based on time, I hope we can keep the comments brief. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, the Androscoggin County Commission supports the right of the protesters in Cuba to peacefully assemble, protest, and seek a redress of their grievances, and urges the President of the United States and the State Department to strongly, swiftly, and publicly support the rights of these protesters. Furthermore, the Androscoggin County Commission supports the rights of all people around the world to peacefully assemble, protest, and seek a redress of their grievances and to freely exercise their religion. By our speaking out, we help ensure that their sacrifice, protesting against a dictatorial regime will not be in vain. Freedom dies in the dark, and I would urge my fellow commissioners to pass this. If we are in such a press for time, at least we could pass it and stand for people's freedom.
Right to the resolution, please, until the comment.
Madam Chair, you did ask me to keep the comments brief, so I did. Thank you.
Second it.
Okay. Any comments or do we want to just go ahead to a vote?
Yeah, I got a comment if I could. Thank you, Chair. I have a problem with just the general premise of it. Sure, freedom and whatever. But having one of us making declarations that we, the Androscoggin County Commission, such and such and such and such, before we've even, voted on anything or discussed it, it's not really, I didn't even hear a motion there to pass this resolution. It's just, making declarations about things that are just absolutely out of our realm. Again, that and campgrounds and whatever else has been brought up in the past. And you know, I've heard some of the commissioners say that they didn't want to talk about things that weren't in our purview, which is our employees, our jail, registry of deeds, registry of probate, dispatch, this building, the judicial system. These things we don't often talk about very much. And we're here to talk about the Cubans. So I don't think this should have been on the agenda, and I think there's a real problem with us even talking about this. If you want to talk about it in your own time, that's great. But clearly there's stuff to be done. We have all this money. We don't have a plan for basically any one of them. We could be talking about the details of that and moving it forward. I'd love to hear that, but we're not. So thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm also of the opinion that the county commissioners, I looked at the charter when I saw this, and I have to admit, I think we've digressed from our duties in looking at international matters. I think people are to be commended if they wish to write to the local newspaper what their opinions are. But Androscoggin County Commissioners were not elected to venture out in international matters. So I don't understand why we would be taking this up. I agree with Noel. We have many things that we've been tasked with doing concerning the various items that he's mentioned. And I would love to have us stay focused on those items versus digressing into world matters. Not that I don't think that it's good for you to be involved in the world, but that's not the business of the county commissioners.
Can I call a question?
Sure.
Second.
Okay, vote on calling the question. All in favor of calling the question? 2, 3, 4 opposed. Okay. So we'll call the question. Those in favor of passing the resolution.
Madam Chair, I request a roll call vote. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of passing the resolution. Commissioner Ames.
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Christner, yes. Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Medora,
No, and I'll also would like the minutes to note, because I've never said this and I've had to hear it 1,000 times. But I don't know if any single one of us here is much of an expert on foreign policy with Cuba to make any declaration about
Madam Chair,
what's going on
objection.
over there.
Objection, it's only debating the issue when it's voting time. You can make a statement afterwards, I believe, when the vote's closed.
Commissioner Poirier,
I have never heard you object to
Well, you can
anything
object.
to go in the
You can object
minutes.
and you ought to vote again.
No.
Commissioner Larry,
Aye or yes in support. Thank you.
no, this is actually the appropriate time for you to do your, the statement at the end of where I've got down, I think, everything you said. Did you have anything else? You're welcome to finish your
No.
statement.
Thank you, fellow commissioners.
All right. Discussion items. I'm hoping we can keep this brief. We have people waiting to start the workshop portion.
Sure.
So,
Mr. Post, do you envision providing us detailed information on your plan on spending the money?
Absolutely. And we had, if you look back, we had discussed almost all of those things in some depth in the past, but I will give you a written description on each one.
I'll have to respectfully disagree. You know, we've never talked about to the software for the treasurer's office, never talked about this DA thing. $150,000 for the meeting room. You know, as I said, I am in favor of a lot of this. It's just there needs to be a plan, and it's been months. And I know you do care about it, and I know you have your thoughts, but I don't know why you're not writing them down and presenting them to us so we can talk about it. Because that's the only way for this to really work. And this is a lot of money. And so, I really want to see for us next time to have some of this, have to know what we're voting on and what the plan is. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Post, I do agree with, I think, the large majority of the commission of the desire to see more information on that. Could you include, as I think Commissioner Kelly referenced, sort of, when I say justification, that sort of comes across like a negative word, but sort of a reference of where in the final interim guidance document that we're kind of basing off our decisions, sort of where we can find that, whether that's page 5, section 2.3, all the garbage, the way the federal government writes it, that will be very much appreciated, just so that we can look at that and say, okay, this seems to make sense for us. And I guess if I could ask, would you envision on the, because the money we set aside for the space needs, that's not hitting HVAC. Could you, if the commission so wishes, could you possibly come back with a number that would possibly some sort of an estimate that we could look at approving $30,000 towards getting that analysis, that estimate, the engineer's estimate to get us to where we need to know of what that HVAC should cost. If we don't already have that money going, I don't think we do. Okay, if you could get that for us next meeting, if the commission understood. Okay, thank you.
Question, if I could, Chair.
Go ahead.
Who's going to send the resolution to the president? Is that a plan? I mean, if we're going to pass this resolution about supporting freedom in Cuba, who's going to send it to the president? Because if the president doesn't know we passed it, how is he going to know that we're urging him to take action? Or is this all about us?
Madam Chair.
So now you're wasting
Madam
time. This is fantastic.
I'm not sure if the president knows what's going on in general. So even if we sent it to him, how could he read it?
I don't think that disrespectful comment about the president of the United States is warranted. What I'm saying is, if we
Excuse me, I
pass.
have the floor, Madam Chair. I have the floor, sir. I listen to you, now you can listen to me, and you are inquiring why we don't send the resolution to the president. He won't read it anyway, even if he can read it. We made a public statement that we align with the freedom fighters in Cuba, something that the president should have done himself already, something that the Congress and the State Department should be 100% behind. There's talk about providing internet to the Cubans so they can help to free themselves, and that hasn't even occurred. So my first reaction when I saw this resolution was, well, we shouldn't be debating national issues, and maybe we should just let it die for lack of a second. Then I got thinking, after talking to other people, realizing that there's been almost no press on this anywhere. It's buried in the press where we talk about all sorts of foolish other things. And meanwhile, people are fighting for their freedom, for their lives in this dictatorship, a leftist dictatorship. And if you support that dictatorship, then you should vote no on the resolution, as you did. I'm not saying why you voted for it, but that would be an appropriate vote for those who support the dictatorship. So I thought we'd toss a little bit of support to these people fighting for their lives in Cuba that have been under communist dictatorship for 80 years. That's why I voted for it. I don't care if Mr. Biden knows this happened or not. Maybe the Cuban people will find out that at least somewhere in Maine, some people stood with them. That's all.
Okay, so we have
Chair, if I
guests
could
waiting
just,
for a workshop, so can we
just one thing
can we
about the
just move
decorum.
on?
I don't think saying disparaging things about the president has any room here in Androscoggin County. We're elected officials who need to uphold the government. The legitimacy of the government is in our hands. And when we disparage the president, that looks bad on all of us. And so I don't think there's any room for something like that. If you want to talk about policy, you go for it. But to say whether he can read or not and stuff like that or comprehend, that is disrespectful. It's against the bylaws. And honestly, I think anyone who's saying that should be ashamed, because that's not how political discourse happens should be happening in this nation. It's not about that.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I see that all the time by every senator and representative in the entire state of Maine and the nation. Thank
Actually,
you.
that's not a point of order.
And Madam Chair,
that's not a point
just
of
please
order.
make sure you use the gavel against other commissioners as well.
That's not, I'm telling you, I'm ruling that that's not a point of order. Nobody
Go
is
ahead,
breaking the
Flora.
Medor, and no one is breaking the order of the meeting by that comment, whether we agree or disagree. It's not a point of order, so it's not an opportunity that you can interrupt. Mr. Poirier, and then after Mr. Poirier, I would like to move on, and we have people waiting for us to discuss important issues.
I'd like to clarify that my vote for no was not in support of a dictator, as John Michael implied just now. I really was offended by that. My vote no was because that is not what the county business is about. And for you to misinterpret it, saying that I support a dictator is demeaning and insulting. And with that, thank you.
Madam Chair, you want to respond to that? I didn't say you had voted to support a dictator. I said if someone wanted to support the dictator, they could vote no.
Right.
I didn't
I
say.
voted no,
I'm glad you told us.
and I don't want that.
Perhaps Commissioner Joe would qualify his
No,
vote as
no,
well.
okay, I think we're good there. Let's, future
Chair.
agenda, we have two future agenda items to
Madam
accept the
Chair.
audit. No, we're moving on. Because this is an item that was already voted on and already put to bed, so we're really spent enough time on it. Accept the audit, and also I had a. second
Madam
thing
Chair, I
that
was not even
wanted
allowed to speak to that issue.
to
Point of
our,
order, Madam Chair.
discussion On the rescue funds, those are the two items for future agenda. Is there another future agenda that I have missed? on
Madam
my
Chair.
notes Throughout the meeting? I'm not recognize you. We have moved on to a new subject.
You might not even know what I'm asking for,
With
Madam Chair.
No other future agenda items. Of course, if you have one, feel free to email them before the Wednesday of next meeting. I would entertain a motion to adjourn so we can get on to our workshop.
Second.
Commissioner Kelly, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Meeting.
And I
is
wish the minutes to
adjourned.
reflect that I requested to be recognized multiple times. And I would request that all commissioners would be treated in the same way you treated me, if that is an appropriate way, Madam Chair. Thank you.
It was a point of order. Okay, let's.
I'm speaking
take
of
a
not being
quick breather.
recognized. Thank you.
Let's take a quick breather